Welcome to Talmudic Treasures. Today we're learning Gittin page 28, which literally means koach, strength, which is no coincidence that on this particular page we find something related to power and strength. Namely, a person who wishes to give a divorce document to his wife sends an agent to do so. Now, what happens if, let's say, he would die, this husband, before the get was given? No longer may this divorce document be given. Now, of course, she can remarry someone else, but she's no longer considered to be a divorced woman, rather an almana, a widow. Now, that does have certain important ramifications, especially when it comes to her marrying, for example, a Kohen. A woman who's divorced is not allowed to marry a Kohen, but a widow can. That is one of numerous differences. Now, we're not going to assume, because this is before cell phones, that this guy died. Even if he's an older gentleman, we're not going to assume that just because the agent turned around, that this person, if we haven't known anything else, he's still alive. We're going to assume that. It's what's called cheskas chai. We have the assumption that since the agent left this husband and the husband was alive, so too we'll assume that that's the case. Now it says, even though he is a zaken, he is older. On this, the Talmud says, it depends how old. Once he reaches the age of 80, then all of a sudden, perhaps the laws may change. Because once he's already reached that age, maybe even though he is, of course, alive, but once he's reached the age of 80, at that point, maybe we're no longer going to say he's necessarily going to be alive. If, let's say, it takes a month somehow to get to the other side of the world, maybe he will not be alive. And that is the question that the Talmud asks. But I'd like to focus on the language. It doesn't say 80, it says reaches the age of gevura, of strength, of power. Now, why is that particular word used? It's based on what King David said. King David said in Psalms and Tehillim that the days of a person's life is shivim shana, 70 years. However, v'im b'gvurot, but if you're strong, shmonim shana, 80 years. And therefore, based on Psalms, there's question whether or not after 80 years old, this guy is necessarily alive. But I often wonder, why does King David specifically use that language of strength? Usually when you think of someone who's 80 years old, they are not strong. Shouldn't it say, the days of a person's life is 70, but if he was healthy, 80. What does it mean, strength? And this is an unbelievable insight that we hear constantly when it comes to the importance of longevity. In order for a person to be able to live beyond the average age, a person who just lived an average regular lifestyle, which does not include regular exercise, that person will live, at least in the times of King David, until 70. However, if a person is 80 years old, do you know how you're going to reach that? Is if you are strong. We know that unfortunately many times when a person is older, one of the terrible things that happens is they slip, they fall. And when they fall, they break a hip. And because of that, it's hard for them to even ever recover. And unfortunately, a lot of the fatalities at an older age is due to the decrease in muscle mass. So King David, interestingly enough, is already alluding to a person who is able to live longer. You need to make sure that even though typically when you get older, you lose muscle mass, you need to be able to build that strength. And therefore, if a person is 80, it's only because of gevura, because of the strength, or the name of this page, which is chavches, koach, the strength that they have within that causes them to live a longer life.